Hello everyone, welcome back again to my channel. In this video we are going to learn t-test. That is to say, we are going to compare items. So in this video we are going to consider three main t-tests. We will first of all talk about t-test, one sample t-test, and then independent sample t-test, and then paired sample t-test. So in any of these tests that we are going to do, it is just about comparing something to another. With the one sample t-test, we always emphasize on one group, and then we compare the mean of that group to a particular benchmark. For example, we want to compare the scores of these students against the pass mark, which is 50%, and then to see if the mean score of the students is statistically significant different from that one, which means we want to compare the mean score of the students against the benchmark 50%, and then to see whether they perform lower than it or higher than it, and also to check whether that difference, the difference between their mean score and then the 50%, whether it's statistically significant. That is the objective of this one. And then the t-test of independence is just to compare this particular same thing but among two groups. So we want to find out whether there is score difference between males and females. So you can, in this case, you can compare the t-test of independence in more than two groups. It should be two groups. It shouldn't also be less than two groups. So it's just like two groups, either males and females, true or false. Any dichotomous response you can compare it with. So we now want to find out. So in this case, we want to find the mean score of the males as compared to the mean score of the females, to check if there is statistically significant difference in their mean scores. So in that case, the first thing we have to do is to get the mean score for the males and then the mean score for the females. And then second thing we have to do is to check whether the difference between their scores are statistically significant. And then when we say statistically significant, that means the difference did not just happen by chance. So in all cases, it can happen. It's not just like random difference. So that is what we mean by statistically significant difference. And then the third one is paired sample t-test. This one is performed on one group but in two times. So that is to say, before and after something. So maybe we want to compare the performance of a particular drug. So before the introduction of the drug, we could see that the students are suffering more on this particular disease. Or let me say, maybe the students want to introduce something to check whether it can boost their performance in school. So before the students, let me use smoking. A student may not be smoking, and then the student may be performing in a school. And then the student could think, oh, maybe if I smoke, I can get more, like, I wouldn't feel dull in learning. It will make me active to learn more. So the student started smoking. Now the student can compare his performance before smoking and after smoking. But in our case, students are going through stress, and then we brought, so these are their stress level. The stress level ranges from 1, which is low, to 1, which is lower, 2 low, and then 3 neutral, 4 high, and then 5 higher. So these are the stress levels. And then now these are the stress level first. We now introduce a counselor by saying that, oh, when this counselor comes, there could be a change in the stress level as to whether the stress will decrease or increase. But our objective is we want the stress level to decrease. So the counselor spoke with the students concerning their relationship, concerning their finances, concerning their academics, concerning their social environment. So after the counselor finished speaking with the students, these are their stress levels. So now we want to compare if there is statistically significant difference. Now for it to be statistically significant, we compare it with a threshold that is 0.05. So if it is statistically significant, that means our p-value that we are going to drive should be less than or equal to 0.05. So if we had our p-value this way, that means any difference that we had is statistically significant, which means that it did not just happen by chance. Otherwise, it is not statistically significant. That means if the p-value, our p is greater than 0.05, so that means it is not statistically significant. So now let's start with the one sample t-test and then see. So in that case, we want to compare the scores against that the benchmark 50%. So we start with analyze. We go to compare means, and then we have one sample t-test. Then we select. So now we want to compare the score with so we push the score to the test variable. It should be here. Now we set our benchmark. We want to compare the mean score against the benchmark, which is 50%. So we have it this way. And then we say, okay. So when we run the test, we come here. Then we check the mean score of the students. That is the first thing we have to check. Now, this is also the test value we are going to compare it with. So when we check the mean score of the student, it is 41%. In other words, 66%. Then we compare it with this one. And this one becomes the mean difference. The mean difference is just to subtract the 50 from the mean that we had, and that is this one. Then after we had this, we could see that the mean score of the students is higher than the benchmark, which is 50%. So, but the question is, the next thing we have to do is it statistically significant? And by doing that, we take the significance value here and then compare it with our benchmark 0.05. So if it is less than or equal to 0.05, we say it is statistically significant. Otherwise, it is not. So when we come here, you realize that this one here is less than 0.05, which means we have evidence to conclude that the mean score is significantly higher than the test value. That is our benchmark. So that means the students are performing above the average, if 50 is the average score. So basically that is how we go by the one sample t-test. Now let's move to the independent sample t-test. In this case, we want to compare this same score, but at this time against male and female, to check if the male score, the mean male score is significantly different from the mean female score. So we start with analyze, compare means, and then we come to independent sample t-test. Then we have our by default, when you come here, we have our test variable and our grouping. So we want to test what we are testing is the scores, and then it will be based on gender, that is male and female. So we have it here. Then you come here, define groups, and then here group 1 you put 1, and then group 2 you put 2. That is what we are just coming to define, and then you say continue. So then you say okay. So when you finish this one, you realize that you come to the group statistics. Then the gender, we have male and female, and then we have this number of males, 96 females, and this the mean score for males, and then the mean score for females. We could see that the mean score for males is slightly higher or a bit higher than the mean score for the females. So any layman by description, you could see that the males, they perform better than the females. But can you use this one to draw conclusion? And that is where the T test of independent self will come. So when it comes, you will see here, do not be confused. At this side, we have Levene test of equality of variance. This not checking the mean differences. And then test for equality of means. This is what is used, we use for the mean differences. So now this one, we use equal variance not assumed. So this one here too, we try to compare if this one, the significance here is less than 0.05. That means we use equal variance not assumed. Otherwise, we use equal variance assumed. So in that case, we come to this side and then check. So we use the equal variance not assumed because this one here is less than 0.05. And once it is less than 0.05, then we use this one. If it is greater, then we take this one. Otherwise, we take this side. So we come here. So when we take this one, this is our p-value now. And then we go to our threshold. Let me go to the threshold. We could see that our p-value here, that means this particular assumption is met. And once the p-value is greater than 0.05, because we have our p-value, which is 0.814. And this one here is greater than 0.05, which means it is not statistically significant. In that case, we will say that the mean score of males and females is not statistically different in the exams, which means that this particular one, maybe the male scored a bit higher just by chance. So that means this particular descriptive that we are seeing just happened by chance. Maybe in a different exam, the females can equally overtake the males. That is basically how it works here. And now, our next one is, these are the students. They were going through stress. By then, there was no counselor. And then, these are their stress levels. So the institution realized that, okay, let's bring a counselor. Maybe, so that the counselor will start speaking to the students. And for the first meeting with the students, these are their stress level. So now let's see whether the introduction of the counselor has significantly influenced the students' stress. So we go to analyze, compare means. Then we come to paired sample t-test. So this is variable 1, this is variable 2. So stress before counseling, I call it stress 1. And then stress after counseling, we call it stress 2. That one too will go into the variable 2. These are the only thing you need to do. And then you say, okay. So when you come, the first thing you have to do is to check their mean stress before counseling and then stress after counseling. You will realize that their mean stress differ. So this one, the mean stress is 3.94, which is approximately 4, and this one 2.55, which is approximately 3. And then this is their difference, the mean. We should have their mean difference. Okay, so we can take the mean difference by subtracting this one from the other one. So this one too is just telling us the correlation, the relationship between the stress before counseling and the stress after counseling. I will explain correlation to you in our subsequent video, so I don't want to say much about this, but what I will say is that there is a strong positive relationship before and after, positive relationship in stress before and after the meeting of the counselor. So now we come here to check. This area is very important. We try to check if, so this becomes the mean difference. So that's when we take this one minus that, you get what we have here. So here we check, we use this one now to confirm whether the difference we are seeing here is statistically significant. And again, we come to this side, we compare whatever we had, our p-value, this is our p-value, then we compare it with the threshold 0.05, and then see, but we could see that 0.001 is less than 0.05, and for that matter we will say it is statistically significant. That means we go by this one. When we go by this one, it means it is statistically significant. If we go by the second one, it is not statistically significant. So now when it is statistically significant, what do we say? So that means that there is statistically significant influence, or the meeting of the counselor has statistical influence in the stress reduction, because when the counselor came, the stress has been reduced. So from here to that, and then it is statistically significant. So based on 95% confidence interval, as we have it here. So now this is basically the one sample t-test. Try to compare, is performed in one group, and this particular one we try to compare it with a particular threshold. The independent sample t-test is performed in a particular group, but we try to measure it across two different groups, and then the paired sample is measured on one particular group, but in 2 times or more than 1 time. That's, it has been measured before something and then after something. So this is the before counselor meeting, and then this after counselor meeting. So now how do we report this academically? When we get the results, we put it in Word formats, and this is our one sample t-test, this our test value, this our mean and standard deviation. Sorry, it's like they are too closer. Let me, okay, so I think this way is okay. So now you could see this is the mean score of the students, and this is the test value. This is the one we are comparing. You could see that this one is higher, but is it statistical? That is to say, if the difference here makes sense in statistical case. So we use this one to support whether what we have seen here can make sense in all cases, or it just happened by chance. So let's see the reporting. A one sample t-test was conducted to determine whether students' performance scores differed significantly from the hypothetic value of 50. As shown in table 1, the mean performance score, that is, we call this one, and the standard deviation of this, was significantly higher than the test value. Yes, the results of the one sample t-test indicated a statistically significant difference, that is t-test. So our t-test here and this one, they all speak the same way. So this one is the one we calculate from the table, and this one is what we just use the computer to get, and then we compare it with the threshold as I've been showing you, 0.05. The mean difference between the observed mean and the test value was this, and then this. So there is statistical significance difference. So since this one is less than 0.05, so, and based on the confidence interval ranging from 14 and then this one, so the mean difference here, this one can fall between this and that. That is basically what we are trying to see. So the findings suggest that students' performance scores were significantly above the benchmark value of 50. So basically that's how we report it. Then we come to the independent sample t-test. So now when we come to that side too, these are the things we emphasize. The mean for males and the mean for females. Then we could see the mean for the males is slightly higher than the mean for the females. And then we have the difference here. This is the difference between their means. So now we also compare, and then what we do here is whatever we had there, we try to use this one to support it, whether it is significant, whether it happens by chance or not. So what we had here is 0.814. Then we compare it with 0.05. We could see that 0.814 is greater than 0.05. And if it is greater, we say it is not statistically significant. If it is greater, that means it is not statistically significant. So when you get to this side, that's what it means. So you can pause the video here and then just read how I report it. Now let's move to the next one. Paired sample t-test, that is before of students' stress level, before and after the counselor, or after the introduction of the counseling. Now, before the arrival of the counselor, this was their mean stress, and then after the arrival of the counselor, this is their mean stress. That is to say, stress before counseling and then stress after counseling. So now we could see stress before counseling was higher than stress after counseling. But let's see, is this one significance? So this one is just like the correlation as I explained. So we don't need it here much. Even though it says something, there is a strong relationship between stress before counseling and then stress after counseling. But that is not the main objective here. So the main objective is to check whether what we are seeing here is significant or makes sense. So if it is significant, that means it makes a lot of sense in statistical perspective. So we try to compare the value to 0.05. If it is less, it is statistically significant. Otherwise, it is not. So when we run the analysis, we had it as 0.000, so which means that it is less than 0.05. And for that matter, we say that there is statistically significant reduction in the stress level after counseling. So that is basically how it is, because our objective is for the student stress to go down. We don't want them to be so much stressed. So now let's see the reporting. A paired sample t-test was conducted to examine whether there was a significant difference in student stress level before and after counseling. As presented in Table 3, the mean stress level before counseling was this, with standard deviation this, was higher than the mean stress level after counseling, mean of this, and then standard deviation of this. The paired samples correlation indicated a strong positive relationship between stress levels before and after counseling. So this one is just telling the relationship, suggesting consistency in individual stress patterns over time. So we will do correlation on its own, so I wouldn't emphasize much here. The results of the paired sample t-test reveal a statistically significant reduction in stress level following the counseling. So our t value, or this one, we calculate it from the we calculate it manually and compare it with a table value. So we don't have the table value, so we wouldn't say much about this one, but this one, there is a standard way we compare it with the 0.05 as I have been showing you. So this and that work in the same manner. So we always use this one compared to the 0.05, and once it is less than 0.05, we say it is statistically significant. So that's why we said reveal statistically significant reduction, because this one is less than 0.05. The mean difference in stress across was 1.9. So that is to say, taking the mean stress before the counseling and then after the counseling, when we take the difference, we get this one. And then it falls within, with 95% confidence level, it falls within 1 point, because this value, you can find it between 1.32 to 1.45. These findings indicates that counseling had a significant effect in reducing students' stress level. So this is a simple way to address t-test issue in SPSS, and then how to report it. Please, if you like this video, kindly subscribe, turn on your notifications so that you will not miss important information. Please, I will leave the data in the description section so that you can download and practice alongside with me. Until then, have a great time. Bye.